Hello and welcome back to How About That Crypto. You're watching your almost daily crypto news and updates with your host, Bitcoin Stylist on Twitter and Bitcoin Hairstylist on Instagram. All right, so today's news stories are, well, there's one major news story today, and I just want to make this quick, so let's dive right in. Grayscale sues the SEC. Finally, what does that mean? Not to worry, I'm going to explain it. I'll give you the whole story, but if you like or don't like content, please leave a comment below. Give me a rating. If you're listening on podcasts, if you're watching YouTube, please subscribe and ring the bell. It helps support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. And this is not financial advice. It's for entertainment purposes only. All right, so let's jump right in. And I'm going to share my screen. If you're listening on podcasts, just listen along. Okay. Author Ryan Brown reports for CNBC, Grayscale sues SEC after rejection of bid to turn the largest Bitcoin fund into an ETF. The SEC on Wednesday rejected Grayscale's application to turn its GBTC vehicle into an ETF. Grayscale filed a petition challenging the decision with the U.S. Court of Appeals for District of Columbia Circuit. Crypto bulls have pinned their hopes on the SEC approving the first scale Bitcoin ETF. Okay, so who is Grayscale? Let's start with that. So Grayscale created and manages a trust which buys Bitcoin. This trust is publicly traded under the ticker symbol GBTC. And they say here they're one of the first securities solely invested in deriving the value from the price of Bitcoin. Grayscale Bitcoin Trust is solely and passively invested in Bitcoin, enabling investors to gain exposure to Bitcoin in the form of a security while avoiding the challenges of buying, storing, and safekeeping Bitcoin directly. So basically, if you want to buy Bitcoin, but you don't want to open a Coinbase account and deal with learning about blockchain and wallets, or you don't want to just like give another company your social security number, you already have a you already have a financial institution, they already have all your information, all your accounts are connected to it, and you want to buy and get exposure to Bitcoin. Well, right now you could buy the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. It is currently trading at a 30% discount approximately to the price of Bitcoin relative to their Bitcoin holdings. You could also buy a futures ETF, which I'll get into in a second. So there are ways that you can get exposure to Bitcoin without actually having to buy Bitcoin. There is a way to do it through these investment vehicles. So now we understand what the deal is with the trust wanting to be an ETF. So they want to be an ETF, but like, what does that even mean? Remember, Grayscale is suing the SEC for not approving their application to convert the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust to a spot ETF. So what's the difference between a trust and a ETF? So let's go into here. Grayscale Bitcoin Trust Fund is the absolute leader in the cryptocurrency market with $35 billion in assets under management. Investment trusts are structured as companies, at least in regulatory form, and are closed-end funds. Thus, the number of shares available is limited, and the supply and demand for them largely determines the price. So supply and demand of these shares determines the price more than the supply and demand of Bitcoin, which is why it's not a perfect investment vehicle. An ETF, on the other hand, allows the market maker to create and redeem shares at will. Therefore, premium or discount is usually unlikely if enough liquidity is in place. So this is basically saying that the ETF will fluctuate its shares. They can create and redeem shares at will. So they could fluctuate maintain basically each share will be constantly in line with the price of Bitcoin at any given time. So the supply and demands of the shares don't determine the price of an ETF, a spot ETF, but they do in a trust. So it's an imperfect vehicle. You can't just like, oh, I think Bitcoin's going to go up 10%. You can't buy into Grayscale, the trust, and then sell it after that 10% jump because it won't necessarily move exactly the same. But a spot ETF will move the same with the market. There might be a slight lag, but it's very close to the mirroring the price. Okay, so now we got it that Grayscale is a trust. They want to be an ETF. Well, a futures ETF is approved. Well, what's a futures ETF? Let's check that out. All right. So what is a Bitcoin futures ETF? The majority of Bitcoin futures ETFs hold Bitcoin futures contracts. Futures contracts provide users the ability to bet on Bitcoin's price, having them agree to buy or sell Bitcoin at a specific price on a specific date. Futures contracts are generally used for speculative hedging purposes. You could just buy Bitcoin at any time, but a futures ETF ensures that users can invest in digital assets. So basically, no one actually buys Bitcoin. You're just buying a contract that says I'm going to buy and sell it. And it says, how does a Bitcoin ETF, a spot ETF, provides the same streamlined investment capabilities as a futures ETF, but it only allows users to invest at Bitcoin's spot price rather than a future value. So I guess you might want to buy it at future value if you think it's going up. You could short the future value if you think it's going down. Well, the spot ETF is really for you to buy at its current price. So it's great for your traditional investor who doesn't want to get into the crypto space. And so let's see. Let's keep moving. All right. So let's jump back to the original article. So Grayscale sues the SEC after rejection. I told you yesterday that we were waiting until July 6th because that's how long the SEC had to approve or disprove the Grayscale application. And they said, oh, I want to get on my holiday weekend early, so let's just do this right now because we were going to reject it anyway. Basically. Okay, so let me play this video again and I'm going to wrap it up and let you all get off to work or whatever you're doing.
The Securities and Exchange Commission rejecting Grayscale's application for a spot Bitcoin ETF, and the company is now suing the SEC. CNBC reached out to the SEC on this issue. They were not immediately available for comment outside normal U.S. working hours. Joining us now in a Squawk exclusive is Grayscale CEO Michael Sonnenschein. Michael, great to have you with us.
Good morning, Melissa. Great to be here.
Is there a precedent for this sort of action to sue the SEC for a rejection?
Well, Melissa, it's been a busy 12 hours for the Grayscale team. Of course, last night getting the SEC's decision, we were, of course, very disappointed, but as an organization, we were ready. Regulators do get sued, and it does happen frequently. Last night, after receiving the SEC decision, our attorneys almost immediately filed a petition for review with the appellate court in D.C., and that starts the litigation process contesting the SEC's decision, which we, of course, vehemently disagree with.
What is the core thrust of that suit? If you can just give me sort of the elevator pitch, so to speak, on why the SEC is wrong in this decision.
Well, we've laid out these arguments throughout the last couple of months leading up to this decision, really looking at the fact that the SEC is acting arbitrary and capricious by continuing to approve Bitcoin futures-based ETFs while continuing to deny spot Bitcoin ETFs. And when you look at the Administrative Procedure Act, which is really what governs the way that regulators have to govern, they have to be treating like issues alike. And in this case, they're not. They're actually discriminating against issuers like Grayscale who are trying to, bring a product further into the U.S. regulatory perimeter here.
What is the sales pitch right now for prospective GBTC investors, Michael? A lot of folks had gotten on board GBTC early on when there was no other way to easily invest in Bitcoin. But now, more recently, in hopes that this would be turned into ETF and that investors would actually capture that arbitrage, which right now is about 28%.
Okay. So basically, he's like, look, they're not following this administrative rule. And it says that, all right, let's just go down here and where is it? Okay, here we go. Varelli, who is the senior legal strategist, a former U.S. Solicitor General for Grayscale, said that the SEC is failing to apply consistent treatment to similar investment vehicles and is therefore acting arbitrarily and capriciously in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act and Security Exchange Act of 1934. Basically, the government can't just decide, pick and choose winners and losers. They have to apply the same set of standards to everyone. Just because they don't like something, they can't change it up, or just because they have a vendetta against somebody, they just can't change it up. So Basically, the argument is that the same things that they needed, to do to approve, the same criteria they needed to approve the futures ETF, which they approved, would be consistent with whatever they needed to approve the spot ETF. That is, I reported on this earlier. There was an interview that I talked about with a former SEC chairman that said that they are filing the Administrative Procedure Act so that he thinks that someone should sue them. And sure enough, somebody is suing them. So I'll keep you posted on this. The reason this is important is because spot ETF is really the tool or the investment vehicle that's going to buy and hold onto Bitcoin. That means that it's going to take supply off the market. A lot of people can pour into the spot ETF and cause the price to go up because people are going into this vehicle that actually buys Bitcoin and takes them off the market. The futures contracts do not do that. The trust does do that, but because it doesn't mirror it necessarily directly, it's an imperfect tool for investing. So what do you think about this? I think that this is a big deal. They're also saying that this will be 9 to 12 months. So we get another year. We probably have another 6 months with the SEC lawsuit with Ripple. So we're waiting on this precedent to happen and come out, but maybe we'll get some sort of legislation before then, and that'll change all of this stuff. Otherwise, these lawsuits are going to be very important in establishing rules, because that's how the SEC is doing it. They're forcing enforcement, or they're using enforcement, or sorry, they're forcing lawsuits or using lawsuits to basically establish clarity in the market. Unfortunately, they're not just coming up with a list of rules that everyone can follow and understand. They would say that things are differently, but that's kind of how I see it. What do you see? What do you think? Tell me I want to hear from you. And until tomorrow or the next time I see you, have a good day. Hodl on.